about the environmental impact of the clothing system. So now we know, and please stick in your mind the concepts of life cycle and functional unit. Now we have to understand how the environmental impact of the clothing system is, how we can design accordingly, which are the most important parts that are impacting on the life cycle. First thing that we have to understand, other than the functional unit that is already there. So again, the example, it could be the wearing of a garment for a given period of time. The other thing that we have to understand when we talk about trying to have an idea of the environmental impact of the clothing system is the system boundaries, which are literally the borders of the life cycle. Okay, so all the activities that are impacting directly or indirectly to the clothing wear before, during, and also after its use. And this is what we are talking about. So it's a whole set of processes that are distributed along the life cycle. So we have, for example, in the pre-production of a clothing, we have the fibers production, we have the textile production, and we obviously in clothing we also have non-textile materials. So we could have buttons, we could have zips, etc. And this is a good example to understand the concept of system boundaries, because we are integrating this, although it is not maybe immediately part of the product, into our evaluation. For production, we have obviously the garment production and the production of those non-textile components. Then obviously there is distribution, and for the use, we have everything that is related with the wearing and caring about the clothes. And finally, we have disposal with all the options that I was mentioning before. So the reuse, the remanufacturing, recycling, combustion, and landfill. One thing, another thing that could help to understand that system boundary concept is the gray boxes that you see on the right, which are connected to the use phase, and we are considering inside. So what are they about? It's, for example, the energy production and distribution for clothing care. If you are making a washing machine, if you're washing your clothes, you have to consider also what the washing machine is doing in evaluating the environmental impact of the clothes. At some point, this is also a matter of choice. So if your system boundaries in your LCA or in your whatever evaluation could be that you don't consider those stages, but obviously it depends on the goal and intention that you have, and also then it impacts on the accuracy, obviously, of the result that you're gonna have. Yeah, I'm not going too much in detail with that. It's just a recap of all the damaging inputs and outputs that the clothing life cycle has. Maybe you can look at this, at home later. But basically, it's a definition based on that list of environmental impacts that you had at the beginning in relation to all the stages. So you see, maybe you can see also at a glance how the processes, how the inputs and outputs are distributed. So let's try to understand phase by phase what are the processes and how the impacts, how is the impact of the clothing system. And what is this? It's not a life cycle assessment. It's we made it based on literature, so many other life cycle assessments and other calculation by other studies, and it's also the same approach that we had in the book that Carlo mentioned and that was published a few weeks ago. And so let's start to understand which are the processes that are impacting more on the life cycle of textiles. Let me just take a time to enable the bar so I can see the titles. Okay. So again, at a glance, this is the result of a life cycle assessment, and we have three categories. We are not going in depth of what is the way of calculation of those, but so trust me on this. But at a glance, you can see that pre-production and production of clothing are the most impactful stages along the life cycle. Second, we have the use. You see that it's those two yellow and red rectangles. Then we have the distribution, which is very low compared to the others. And finally, the disposal. The disposal even could have a negative result in this sense, because if you are, for example, recycling, in some ways you are in a way avoiding some environmental impact, so that could be also negative. But stick in your mind that those two phases, pre-production and use, are the most impactful in this sense. Okay, so let's go now stage by stage. Pre-production, how are the processes contributing to the environmental impact? This is what we saw before. In fibrous production, we have, let's go, this one is more maybe clear. Let's talk about fibers. So we have natural and man-made fibers. Which are the processes that are impacting on the environment? Obviously, all of these in this order. So we start from plants, animals, or either oil or cellulose. And then we have some very impactful processes at the beginning for cultivation, breeding, but also on the other side, when we talk about man-made fibers, about the extraction and transformation of oil, especially. And then all the other processes that goes through from the fiber to the cleaned fiber, and then the spinning, and finally a textile. So we are not even into garment now. We're just talking about pre-production, which is stop at the point of textile production. And now let's try to understand and make some comparison between fibers. So, for example, here we see it's not a complete life cycle assessment, but it's again an evaluation related to just the pre-production of three materials. We have cotton on the left, we have jute, we have kinaf, and we see how much cotton is impacting more in this sense. So the relative impact is way higher than the other two. And you can imagine why, because cotton has a lot of requirements in terms of water, in terms of fertilizers, in terms of in terms of procedures for fields to stay to grow up and to be then manufactured. And let's now move and try to from cotton to have a comparison between inside cotton. So we have virgin cotton and organic cotton, for example. And we have here the relative impact for the two of the materials. So on the left you have the conventional, and on the right you have the organic, and you see how much you are saving in terms of environmental impact with organic cotton in pre-production. So let's always keep in mind that we are thinking about life cycle. So maybe in the use phase everything changes, but thinking about that the pre-production, for example, cotton use almost exclusively the green water instead of blue water. And so you see that organic has just 9% of the impact in relation to the conventional cotton. But we can make now switch toward man-made fibers. So let's compare virgin polyester and recycled polyester. So we saw cotton, we see the natural fibers before. Let's see how it goes with virgin and recycled polyester. Again, in this case, you see how much the impact is changing. Back to polyester. So the recycled is avoiding impact, obviously related to the extraction, transportation, and processing of virgin oil. So we are not using, we are not starting from scratch with recycled polyester. We are avoiding a lot of effort in the pre-production because we are starting from recycling the virgin polyester. So, okay, so, and now we bring the two together, so cotton and polyester. And this that you see here is a final indicator, as we were discussing before, total impact indicator. And you see, it's we have polyester with 20% less than cotton. So I give you, it's a question for you now, which is the best choice at this point? So we have that 20% less at this point of the pre-production. That's the thing that I want to stress. So we are still in pre-production, so it's not said that the fiber is better than the other. Because, for example, in the use phase, polyester needs to be washed more frequently because of its oleophilic properties. That's the point. So yeah, that was keep in mind the life cycle thinking. And now a point on toxicity. That is also part of pre-production. So when you use fertilizers and etc., pesticides and wet processing, you are using a lot of, it's used a lot of chemicals, and a lot of those have a toxicity impact both on humans and on ecosystems. And you see that from this point of view, the human toxicity is, man-made fibers in this sense are kind of impacting, while on the other side of ecotoxicity, freshwater, the cotton is the most impacting. And again, this is not enough to say one is better than another, because we need to see how it is used in the product, in the final product, and how it is in relation to a functional unit and the life cycle. But at this stage, yeah, this is the overview on toxicity. And also we have other alternatives which are hemp and flax, which are not needing pesticides. I'm not going through this now, but you can read about it. So there are alternatives on cotton to reduce ecotoxicity. And we switch now to production. So the production is when you have the textile and you start to produce your garment, your piece of clothing. And those are the processes. So cutting, sewing, trimming, ironing, those that are called as the makeup phase of the garment. In general, the production phase is not impacting a lot on the life cycle. And that is also why we don't have many studies on that. But from this example, we can see how how sewing is maybe the highest relative impact for these indicators. And here it comes something that we discussed before. So you see that sewing is impacting, is the most impacting process on all the indicators, but not on ozone layer depletion and on photochemical oxidation. So in theory, you cannot decide if it's better, because you don't know if ozone layer depletion is much worse than all the other indicators put together. Distribution is very low in terms of impact. So there is not, we're not going through any data. It's negligible because it's very, very low in relation to the other stages. And we switch now to the use phase. The use phase, which include the wearing and obviously the maintenance. An overview on the overall use phase is this one. So you can see, apart from some mistakes, visual mistakes, but you can see the washing and the detergent, let's say, part of the environmental impact represent the majority of the impact in the use stage. So let's say that when we are washing something, so we turn on the machine with the detergent in, we are making the 60% almost of all the environmental impact in the use stage. And then we move a bit deeper in this sense toward the washing process. We have here a graphic on the different use of a conventional washing machine. So you can wash in warm, or you can wash in cold, and the impact changes a lot. There is a 30% reduction of, but be careful, the carbon footprint we are talking about here, not the overall impact. So again, watch out for the big picture. So it's just carbon footprint. But again, if we go further with this valuation, there is also a comparison with an efficient washing machine. And so you see, we saw that the 30% reduction if we wash in cold. But what happens if we always wash in cold using just a line drying in relation to washing in warm or using a dry? You have a reduction of a 96% of the carbon footprint. So it's not telling anything about the overall impact, but give an idea of how user habits and clothing care could impact on this. Energy consumption is one of the final slides about the use stage. It's just a comparison between the domestic care and the communal facilities. So obviously, when you have a common infrastructure, shared infrastructure with a provider, with an owner, the owner is more interested in reducing the bills, let's say, so both energy and economic costs, and so you have an advantage in this sense in terms of also environmental impact. Here we're talking about energy consumption, but yeah, again, gives an idea on the power of behaviors. Some closing thoughts. I'll leave it to you, but very relevant is you understood the clothing care product design, so washing machine, ironing, whatever. For example, just to make an example, top load machines, washing machines release almost 7 times more microplastics than front load ones. So that's how design could impact the environmental impact, sorry for the word game. And second thought is the relevance of user behaviors. We are designers, we work with user behaviors, and it could be game changing in terms of environmental sustainability. So if you wash every 10 times a product is worn, instead of 2 times, you reduce the impact of the 8%. So that's to give an idea of the overall impact that user behaviors could have. And we switch to the disposal stage. We already saw the stages, the processes, and just again, the impact here is not so much in relation to the other two, so it's faster. But here we have an idea of what we could save if we collect 40% of clothing waste in 2 different scenarios. So you see that the environmental impact will be reduced of the 8% if we collect, let's say, 70% in relation to human health, and the same for ecosystem diversity and reduce resource availability. The concept here is that the disposal phase, let's say all the processes that could recover value from clothes are not very implemented. So 1% of the time is recycled, but here you can have at a glance the idea of what could change if just few of these habits of these processes could be enabled. And yeah, another this I leave it to you as again, not going in depth, but there are also other literature review that have been made comparing a lot of data around from life cycle assessments. And here could be an example of results in which you see that the reuse strategy in this sense, talking about disposal, appears to be the one with the lowest environmental impact, obviously, because you're not inquiring any new energy, any new process to manipulate the material. So this is just a closing one on the disposal stage, and you can go and check the reference. Key takeaways from this part about the environmental impact. Pre-production and use stages are with the ones with the highest environmental impact, and distribution as the lowest. So take this in mind also for your projects, for the next steps, for your talks after the lecture. Then when we combine fibers, a single stage is not giving a life cycle perspective, so it could be misleading. So don't stick to pre-production that says that polyester is better than cotton and move to that. So let's always consider the full life cycle. Finally, single impacting indicators like climate change are not representative of the overall environmental impact. They give us an information. If they are all coherent, so maybe for all the indicators, a material is better than the other, great, that could be a thing and could be a very relevant indication about the environmental impact, but it's not representative of the overall. Yeah, just a couple of slides of references for you that will be sent afterwards. So you will be able to check all the sources